Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Hannah, if you're new here, and today we're gonna talk about how to finish a project that you've started. So I don't know about you, but I have a ton of projects that I eventually started somewhere down the line and I just couldn't get round to finishing them. That is for a whole lot of different reasons, and today I wanna share my advice on how you can actually, for real, finish the projects that you've started. So if you're someone who struggles with this as well, this video is for you. So there are a lot of reasons why we don't follow through on our projects, and the first step is to assess the problem. Only when you know why you don't follow through with your projects, you can actually find a solution that works for you and take the actionable steps that you need in order to successfully finish your project. So first of all, I want you to ask yourself, why aren't you finishing your projects? Is it maybe because you're lacking motivation? Maybe you like to start new projects and they seem super exciting, but when a new idea comes along, you kind of ditch the old one, move on to the new, or you just get stuck in a rut and don't know how to continue the project and you lose the motivation to actually follow through. Or maybe it's more of a time problem. You don't have the time to commit to a project, or something came up and you had to move it to the back of your priority list, or you said yes to something that you actually wanted to say no to and now it takes up all of your time. There's lots of reasons why this can happen, and sometimes because things get moved way back to the line, you even forget that the project existed in the first place. This has definitely happened to me, so if that happened to you, don't worry, it happens. But maybe it is something else and you are unhappy with your project. Maybe it's not going the way you planned, the way you envisioned, and it's just not living up to your expectations. So you just don't feel like continuing, or sometimes even procrastinating doing that. So no matter what the problem is, it might even be multiple, there's a solution for everything. And chances are, while assessing what keeps you from finishing your project, you realize that this is actually a pattern that applies to more than just one specific project. But becoming aware of it is the first step, and we'll find a solution that works for you to actually help you finish your projects. As important as it is to figure out why you stopped doing a project, it is also super important to figure out why you started the project in the first place. Having a strong why can help you determine whether to follow through with the project or maybe leave it behind, because just because you started a project doesn't mean you have to finish it. If it is not aligning with your vision, with your overall goals, and it's not serving you in any way, for example, it is teaching you a new skill set, or it's your creative outlet, or it drives your career in any way, if this is not happening, then you don't have to finish the project. You can just make your peace with it and let it go. It's fine. So now that we've assessed what our reoccurring patterns are and what our problem actually is, it is time to figure out how to move forward. So if your biggest problem is lacking motivation, then first of all, let me say this is completely normal. Everyone lacks motivation at some point, no matter how big your why is. It is part of the creative process. There's actually the 6 stages of the creative process that I don't know who created it originally, but I believe stage 3 of it is this is shit, stage 4 is I am shit. So losing motivation and not believing in yourself at some point during the creative process is completely normal. And if it helps you in any way, keep a visual reminder of that somewhere where you can see it to remind you that it is normal to lose motivation, but all you have to do is just push through it. No matter how hard it is, just do it, and you will be so much happier at the end when you actually follow through. Another idea is to write yourself a letter or a little note next time you do finish a project, and just talk about that feeling of relief and success and happiness that you feel once you actually achieve the project. So next time you do get stuck, you can just read through it and remind yourself of that feeling when you're done coming out the other end. So that sometimes helps me go. And all you need is a little push sometimes. That's what I'm saying. Something else you could do is also to find a buddy to help you keep accountable. Maybe someone who also has a project they want to finish or a goal they want to achieve, and you can just keep in check and bounce ideas off each other and just motivate each other. So every time you take a step towards your goal, you let your friend know. Every time they take a step towards their goal, they will let you know. And when you get that message from the other person saying that they've worked on it, you're most likely feel so much more motivated to do the same. Another way to make you more motivated or even prevent the lack of motivation in the first place is to set a routine for yourself. There's a saying that success doesn't come from what you do occasionally, but what you do consistently. And this couldn't apply to this problem more. So when you set a specific day during the week or maybe an hour every morning and you just show up and start working, even if it's just for 2 minutes, chances are you get really into it and you want to continue and make a lot of progress. So sometimes it just means showing up, even if you don't feel like it. And my last tip is to go when motivation strikes. Now, this might seem a little contrary to what I just said about setting a routine, but it totally doesn't have to be, and it can be combined as well. But if you feel that little spark of motivation and you just want to go and drop everything else, just go and drop everything else. Unless you're doing something really, really important and urgent, then you shouldn't go and do that. But if it's just something very mundane that you can still do 3 hours later, just drop it and do the thing that you're really passionate about. You will make so much more progress when you're really excited and into it, as opposed to just writing it down and saving it for later. Once that later rolls around, you'll probably not be as excited about it. And yes, you will make progress, but just not as much as in that state of real excitement. So try it out. It really has helped me in the past. If your problem isn't so much motivation, but it's actually time, then these next tips are for you. I know that we're all guilty of saying that I don't have time for that. But what we actually mean is, I don't know how to prioritize and I don't know how to plan my time according to my priorities. So what we do is we set ourselves up for a failure because we say yes to way too many projects that we don't want to say yes to, and we don't plan our time accordingly to our priorities. So the best thing you can do is figure out what your priorities are. Get a planner, write everything down that you want to do, figure out what your priorities are, and then plan in the time. Everyone has the same set of 24 hours a day, but it matters how you spend your time, and even more importantly, how you don't spend your time. So if there's something that you don't want to do, it doesn't align with your priorities, then don't be afraid to say no to a project or an offer. Just politely decline and let the other person know that this doesn't align with your priorities at the moment. And when it does in the future, you can always get back to them. But I'm sure that they will appreciate you telling them the truth as opposed to just say, I don't have time for that. And also, you just freed up a bunch of time that you can now use to finish up the projects that do matter to you. Now, this next one is super obvious, but having a planner is very crucial to making sure you have enough time for the tasks that you want to do, or knowing how many tasks you can do in the time that you actually have. So either way, you can write down a list of all the individual tasks that you need to do in order to finish the project, then figure out how much time they will take, and you can schedule them in accordingly. Also, this is super helpful if you're feeling overwhelmed by the project itself because it seems so massive. Putting it down into little goals makes it way more actionable and way less intimidating to actually get started. And if you have a problem with feeling overwhelmed, then just ask yourself, what is the tiniest next step that you could do to get closer to your goal? And maybe just start with that. And then once you get into that, you can do the tiniest next step and then another step. And before you know it, you will actually make progress. Now, if the problem was that you actually forgot that the project even existed, that may be an indicator that the project wasn't that important to begin with. So if you're reassessed and it has to go, just let it go. If, however, it is still relevant and it is important, you just forgot in the midst of all of the other things that are going on, it has definitely happened to me too, then don't worry. You can just make a list where you keep track of all of your projects that are going on. Write them down. You can just brain dump them all in one page and then sort through them and prioritize the things, and then make sure that wherever it sits on your list, you plan in the time. Again, you can use the steps that I already explained. Make little actionable steps and then plan the time in accordingly and just move on with your projects. Also, in general, keeping a list with all of the projects that you eventually want to achieve is super helpful whenever you have finished an old task and you now have the time to start a new one. Then you can just do so and pick one from your list. And I always have mine on my notes app on my laptop and my phone. So whenever I have an opening, I can just refer to the list, pick out a new project and get started. If your project isn't going anywhere because you're not happy with the way it is coming out as opposed to the vision that is in your head, then the biggest tip I can give you is to set realistic expectations. Sometimes we picture these beautiful, magical things in our head, but it's just not realistic to achieve them in the amount of time that you have to finish the project. So the best way to go about that is to assess how much time do you have to finish certain tasks and set your expectations accordingly. The old saying, done is better than perfect, totally applies to this scenario, and I know how hard it is. As a very, very, very avid perfectionist, I know how hard it can be to settle for something that's not quite as perfect, but I also know how stupid it is to not do something just because it isn't as good as it is in your head. At the end of the day, it's just important that you finish the project, and it's not worth stretching it out and spending so much time on those little nitty-gritty things that probably no one will ever notice. Says the girl who, months after filming this, still doesn't upload regularly because she spends too much time working on exactly those nitty-gritty details no one but her cares about. Wow, I'm such a hypocrite. I'm really trying with this video though, so please give me a thumbs up and leave me a nice comment so I know you still like this video. Okay, thank you. Now back to the video. Because done is still better than perfect, so do it. Procrastination is something that we've probably all dealt with at some point to some extent. But did you actually know that procrastination is not a sign of laziness, but a sign of fear? This was a total game changer when I learned this. If you're procrastinating, it most likely means that you're afraid of taking the next step. So instead of facing your fear and overcoming that fear and taking the next actionable step, your brain just goes to something that is super easy and comforting. It has done it a million times, such as watching YouTube videos or watching Netflix. And it's just way easier to do that than facing your fear and getting to the next step and taking some action. So the next time you're procrastinating, think about that. It has definitely helped me to just realize that it is a fear, because once you know that it's a fear, the best way to overcome your fear is going through it. I already talked about this in my last video all about overcoming your biggest fear. So if you haven't seen that, I will link it in the info box below and also on a card up here. The last tip that I have actually applies to all of the problems that I talked about before, and that is writing an if-then list. This is actually a concept created by MuchelleB. She is also a YouTuber and makes life improvement videos. I'm sure if you like my content, you will like hers too, so I will have her channel and the specific video on if-then lists in the info box below, so you can go and check it out. But basically the concept of the list is you write a list from yourself to yourself saying that if occurs, then you will do and you can tailor that to whatever your specific situation is, but the more specific you get with each actionable step, the easier it will be to follow it. So that could be maybe if you're lacking motivation, the first step is, if I am lacking motivation, I will first go on YouTube and watch my personal playlist of motivational videos. Of course, you will have to create the playlist beforehand, but whenever you're lacking motivation, you can go and do that. If that doesn't help, then I will go to my Pinterest board and look at motivational quotes that I've saved. If I'm still not really motivated to do something, then I will do this and that, and you kind of get the point. But this applies to any of the problems. Like I said, these lists are so genius, and I have them for many different things in my life, and whenever I feel overwhelmed or whatever it is, I just refer to my list, and it really helps, especially because you wrote it to yourself. You are most likely to take advice from your own self, so you can write a list for whatever you want. Again, if you want to know more about this specific concept, I will also have the specific video on if-then lists in the info box, and you can go and check it out. But I have rambled on for a very long time. I really, really hope this was helpful for you and you got something out of it. If you did, make sure to give it a like so I know that you enjoyed this video, and also let me know in the comments below what was your main takeaway from this video, or what you struggle with the most, or just if you have anything you want to add, any tips, just leave them in the comments below. I would love to read that. Other than that, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you next video where we can learn, create, and inspire together. And until then, have a lovely rest of your day. I will see you then. Bye.